Playing on the computer, the lad claims to be on his third attempt to survive the zombie apocalypse. He says he gets a bat since he hopes to have a decent weapon this time. He is confident as guns draw many zombies and ammunition is scarce. Should he be living in an apocalypse, he would pick a bat every time. He looks suddenly at the television and sees the insane guy doing a reverse push-up on the chair. He did all this, nevertheless, for $0.76. I retract what I stated since the imbecile struck his head after falling like a moron. But Chiansu stood up at the same moment and asked the man whether he enjoyed that. Said dead. The man known as Only One inquired what he was doing. He then acknowledges his character had been slain on the broadcast and apologizes. He claims it's okay though, he reached the checkpoint and now with this item it will be simple, hence he just has to try again. Only One asks Chiansu if he is truly having fun while he is the only person viewing the stream. Our lad stops for a moment. We call him Chiansugyo. He is a streamer and says Only One doesn't have to say such things. He can only live off live streaming as this person is constantly there. If it is true, the man asks, then he picks him. This confounds Chiansu, but thanks him for picking. The whole room shakes suddenly, and he gets up wondering what's going on. He asks the webcast whether anyone heard that there is a major explosion. He bolts to the window right away and finds the whole city ablaze. People are sprinting, and he alerts the live stream of a glitch. At this point, he discovers his computer has switched off and won't come back on. Uncertain, he chooses to venture outdoors to investigate what is occurring. He yells to a woman he sprints past as soon as he gets on the street. She simply looks at his face, though, and bolts desperately. He finds it perplexing why she is running when he suddenly sees multiple messages. Some messages ask why they chose such a loser, and others claim he looks really ridiculous. Startled at that point, he asks why he finds a chat window in front of him. Those on the live stream begin parodying whatever he says. Some messages claim he cannot touch the conversation, while others indicate something is coming for him. He wonders whether he is hallucinating from streaming for too long. He then sees a zombie in front of him, and the chat states he will die at that point. Watching a player this poor was horrible. When the zombie lunges at Chiansu out of sudden awareness, he cannot understand this data. Falling backward, he somehow manages to kick it and withdraw. People on the video said the zombie simply wanted to shake hands as he starts to flee. Desperate, he gets to his apartment and starts inputting the code. The zombie, though, bursts through the glass right away. The beast starts frantically climbing the stairs while his face is covered in blood. He will not stop chasing him. He cannot extend the distance between them. He is already on the 7th floor. At last he finds the entrance to the roof and attempts to open it, but regretfully, it is locked. The chat advises the zombie to stop being dumb and push the door as he is ascending the stairs. It opens at last and closes with his own body. Though at least he could relax, the undead was hammering on the door. He was wondering on the roof why a zombie had suddenly materialized and why he was surrounded with game-like chatters. Still, the objective was to slay this beast now, apart anything else. He listened behind him and needed a weapon. Looking, he saw an obese man walking towards him already. Start running when he identified him as the building owner. The fool stumbled over a box, though, and collapsed to the ground with the undead closing in. Someone in the chat indicated a supply chest close as he fought to resist. While the zombie was nearly biting Shidansu, he turned to the side. He kicked the monster back, and it returned sprinting at him. Shidansu stepped to the side and yelled for the trash to perish. The zombie then flung itself off the tower, plunging to another existence. The conversation probed whether he had planned it or been lucky. Weary, he dropped to the ground. But it was little time when the zombies were beginning to break the door. He observed there were 3 of them, and the talk said many newbies die this manner most of the time. It was then he came onto the chest and recalled the man inquiring whether that was a supply box. He opened the chest, glowing with light, grinned, and located the fabled bat. As the zombies broke through the door to get our lad, the discussion dubbed it the Excalibur of the Apocalypse. Everyone was expecting he would die as he focused. Grinning, our lad charged ahead, saying for him the end of the world was only a game. Swinging the bat, the first zombie, he missed totally. Surrounded, he started shaking the bat while ordering the monsters to go. Everybody on the live feed began calling him a clown at that point. The zombies were so near that he could not swing the bat correctly. Another appeared from behind as he was immobilizing one. Knowing he had to dodge, he dropped the bat and hurled himself to the ground to evade getting bitten. He was nowhere to swing the bat. The zombies were closing in from behind. He broke out in such situation, and the beasts attacked. He made it through, and the chat amazed at his performance. People were remarking back in his room that he exceeded their expectations. Jiansu, though, discovered his phone and computer were not functioning. When the chat inquired about his destination, he mentioned his parents' place. That meant, despite his age, he was already riding his bike fast. For now, he chose to overlook the talk and concentrate on the security of his parents. Something rushed in front of his bike as he was gauging his remaining gas. People in the discussion inquired whether that was a tongue when he collapsed to the ground. Confused, he understood the message. The chat told him the frog he was looking to the side was horrible. Jiansu was perplexed. It was a genuine creature rather than a zombie. A tongue lash broke through his ideas and he avoided it. One of the chat participants mentioned the tongue, and a ruler showed up with inspiration. Dodging yet another onslaught, he chose to rush straight forward into a tunnel. The monster wouldn't be able to strike him since the place featured several bends. At least he had packed several apparently whole objects. The lad already had a Molotov in hand, challenging the accursed frog to come at him, when the frog cornered him. The talk discussed his bravery during the frog head butte, but he avoided. He tossed the rag at the fool after lighting it on fire. He tossed another one in its face as it did nothing. Given this, the lad knew the frog's weakness originated from the inside out. He would have to risk his life to make it work, and only had one more. Taunting the frog to come behind a wall, he hid. The creature swung with its tongue, then avoided. Taking the Molotov, he hurled it into the mouth of the creature. It staggered back with pain. The conversation was now focused on his risking his life to ensure this plan worked. He said it was at last over as he watched the frog, but the chat advised caution. One of the best novice players they had ever seen, someone said. Our lad asked why people were remarking on his life as though it were all a game. He chose to simply accept it, though, not to give a damn whether it was real or not. He cautioned everyone not to die like a moron. He then got an accolade and the capacity to log his successes. He knew it was just like a game when he received the alert regarding acquiring an ability. He so asked to view the skills panel. The more monsters surrounded him, the stronger he became from his aggression ability. The save record talent allowed him to acquire part of the qualities of this ability as foundation attributes that he would always have accessible. He came to see that this ability was essentially a demand to put oneself at risk. He closed the panel, chose to temporarily ignore it, and went back on looking for his family. The issue was the frog had wrecked his bike. He had to walk, and upon arrival he was astounded. His house seemed as though something enormous had chewed it. Desperate, he entered calling for his parents and questioned their whereabouts. He searched nowhere, though, for them. Then he realized his parents put notes everywhere. Seeking any messages, he began to stroll about the house. At last in his room, he discovered some paper. According to his dad, they would see each other shortly and were fleeing with Division 7.5 men. At least right now, he knew roughly where his folks had disappeared to. The talk made fun of him acting like a fool, because his parents had deserted him. Something seemed off to him as he was chatting to himself. That kind of statement was not what his dad typically left. But he recalled that should this be a game, this could mark the beginning of the first important mission. Given he only had one hint thus far, he resolved not to hurry too much. Searching the pantry, he came upon some canned sardines. The discussion said he was too laid back, and he said he needed to eat before deciding what to do. Then he heard something close by the home. No animals should exist, thus what happened? He moved softly across one of the rooms and heard still another sound. He knew the direction then and dashed there. He discovered a zombie climbing at the window. He closed the door after dining on its hand. This set off the aggressive ability. In 10 minutes, he devoured one creature. He recalled that every opponent he trailed behind may make him 10% more strong. He chose to try this. One of the doors revealed a zombie emerging. He opened it and pounded it to raise the aggress count to 2. The lad was having fun when he walked to another door, demolishing the 3rd and 4th zombies. Next, the 5th, 6th, and 7th. He stopped, not one but twice. He placed everyone there momentarily for sleep. Looking at his own hand, he saw that this ability indeed made him far stronger. Then he heard a sound, and knew it came from the kitchens. He had to finish it in 1 minute since he just had 1 minute of aggravation remaining. He slowly walked up and the chat asked who they felt would prevail. He peered down and spotted a man sheltering beneath his table. A second later, the man obviously employed in a restaurant started cooking. The discussion considered him to be quite courageous to let a stranger prepare dinner in his own residence. The protagonist named them brothers since he lacked knowledge on how to handle the chat. He clarified he needed food since he was fighting monsters on an empty stomach. Not to add, he would react fast if this man appeared hazardous for even a moment. The man then set the dinner on the table. Feeling completely recovered, Chiansu felt it looked really good. Mentioning that he was one of the chefs at the Mayang restaurant, the long-haired man asked whether he liked it. The protagonist claimed he had to combat a lot of zombies since the guy created disturbance. The man was apologizing just before and pleading not to be forced out due to the zombies outside. Chiansu told him he would leave this restaurant right away after finishing his dinner. When the man asked where he was headed, Chiansu replied he was researching his father's background. With that, another man advised they should visit the elementary school as it had turned into an emergency refuge. The protagonist considered it might be a decent spot to find details about his father. But he began to question whether this man directing him over the narrative was a real person or some sort of NPC. He approved and the man identified himself as Mingyu Zhang. Chiansu stated it was time they left and thanked him for the dinner. Mingyu answered no when asked whether he had any means of transportation. Chiansu then indicated they will get his belongings using their bike from the garage. Mingyu agreed and waited for him. Returning to his chamber, Chiansu grabbed a hammer and heard an instant cry. Mingyu's voice alerted him to run outside to find what appeared to be a gigantic zombie carrying him. Mingyu shouted for aid. The talk stated it was the big-mouthed one. The protagonist was aware that thing was far stronger than those zombie frogs from past. The talk referenced most likely the one that bit his house. He started to run with that and would die. He was riding the bike, escaping the scene just following instant. Looking back, the beast flared on him and the 10-minute timer began. Though Chiansu accelerated the bike, the monster was far faster than he had anticipated. He would be caught before pass at this rate. Then he noticed Mingyu's mentioned dropped bike of Pao. 2 more zombies prowled about him, and he flung himself to seize the friend's bike. He started accelerating, nearly caught in tow. The conversation was excellent. The creature was still next to him, hence the issue was still there. But Chiansu informed the broadcast he wasn't the kind to fall without battle. The picture moves to a group of individuals fleeing and guiding everyone into the school. A slubby man claims Mingyu is still out there, and they have to save him. The other man advises the overweight man to hurry inside and says he most likely past died. People complaining they should wait a little longer before locking the gates start the uproar. Then, a man wearing a white bandana advises his friend it would be better for them to enter for now. They hear someone accelerating a motorbike at that instant. Here's our lad carrying something. People start turning around. He stops here. The man upsetting the peace seems afraid. Everyone questions whether what he is carrying on the bike is a body. He only grins, and the conversation notes he seems to like drawing attention. Recognizing it as Mingyu's bike, the man standing beside him asks how he is doing. Our lad says dryly he's dead. Seeking an answer, the man seems perplexed. Chiansu just asks who the leader is there since he believes there is nothing to explain. A man appears to hear this, and as he is ready to speak, another person walks up. Saying he is coordinating that area, a police department guy identifies himself as Sujin. Sujin asks Chiansu whether he actually brought a portion of that monster after he names it. That Sujin knows about the beast surprises Chiansu. He questions what happened to that monster as they lost many individuals to it. Chiansu claims to have killed it. Everyone is shocked, not thinking it is feasible to kill something like this. Riding back on the bike, he asks the chat whether they would like to gamble he would survive. When asked what he would bet, the insane man stated clearly that his life is. That was effortlessly running and demolishing every structure. Turning to the discussion, the protagonist observed the monster didn't look exhausted, and mentioned they would have to do him a favor should he survive. The chat began noting he would fail, and they would not benefit from this. One inquired what would happen if he did not kill it. He responded that he would die in such situation. The chat said it would accept if the scheme was this insane. Only one of the same man from before was present, declaring the deal was struck. Chiansu grinned and went toward the tunnel. He warned everyone they would have to uphold the commitment even if the beast was approaching. Running at 100 miles per hour, the monster crashed into the tunnel. Chiansu informed the man in the shelter he would explain more later, and that he was also searching for a safe spot. Chiansu advises they first find whether he is not infected. Still, the residents claim he is a hero and ought to be let in immediately. He thus lines up, and once they confirm he is not contaminated, is about to go when someone yells out to him. It's the same man from earlier inquiring as to Mingyu's death. Chiansu claims he previously told them and wonders whether the man knew him. The man says indeed, he owned the restaurant Mingyu worked in. Chiansu then says that although they were together and had a strategy, Monster destroyed what they were attempting. Taking the bike, he claims he didn't take anything and he doesn't have to worry. He also says he would never forget the tofu soup Mingyu made. According to the talk, this man had the guy cook for him. Now, he is acting quite moral. The proprietor of the shop is rendered speechless, and Chiansu sets off with that. He passes a blue bag as he gets closer to the institution, and a note declaring he is quitting the tutorial shows. It clarifies that you will now have the knowledge panel to enable his survival. Chiansu finds great interest in the reference to a tutorial. Many people say that now things will really start. Running to a room, he yells out for just one explanation that he can only endure so much without knowledge. He reminds him he has to pay as they formed a bet. Only one wonders about his desired topic of discussion. Chiansu feels it's time he began outlining what is happening. The irate chat asks whether he got any explanations after ignoring everyone. Not at all, replies Chiansu. He is still alive, which surprises them since it begs questions about his apparent knowledge. Confused, Chiansu remarks it's his streamer instincts. The conversation then remarks on how quite fascinating this is a detail. Someone says he can reconstruct the world any way he chooses should he win the game. This confuses Chiansu. Just one responds that exactly what they mentioned. According to him, everything is genuine in this planet. He is the lone player. The only thing they did was alter a few specifics. He is the protagonist only since this group prefers to follow one person at a time and engages with them alone. Given this, one could argue that the other people are somewhat similar to NPC. Only one counsels him, though, not to worry too much about the fact that it is the real world and to simply treat them as viewers of his streams and keep winning the game. Overwhelmed by all this knowledge, Chiansu queries their identity. From the side, he questions if this man is some sort of god or something. Looking at his reflection, he wonders whether only one god exists. One believes that's a dumb inquiry to ask. Which kind of character considers such things? He claims to have simply one clue that might be useful. It's better for him to go all out and present everything he has as they enjoy a person who puts on a good show. Our lad notes that for someone who seldom leaves the house, this is an odd task. Then he accesses the information panel, remembering it. According to it, the primary goal is to guard the police chief since the entire city would fall apart should he die tonight. A little later outdoors, he is seeing the workers at action. Another answers yes when a man wonders whether they ought to leave the food there. Police are issuing some commands while people assemble in the courtyard. Chiansu is aware that among the 150 residents, one poses a threat to the police chief. The officer tells everyone they would be eating together, hence they should approach closer. One of them phones the protagonist, but he dismisses him, claiming he's all right. He approaches a man asking whether he has problems. He says he's going to see the man appears surprised. And the police chief, the man wonders whether there is an issue by his lack of response. The officer answers he cannot say. The discussion notes that Chiansu is sure something is being kept hidden since this appears odd. He asks the officer whether he might call for department boss Sujin Lee. The man talks to someone, apparently seeking permission to reveal specific information. When he asks the protagonist whether he killed the monster, Chiansu answers positively. The man then claims he will be honest. The police chief vanished on patrol, hence they were seeking experienced professionals like him. Chiansu wonders why nobody is searching for him, since he understands the assignment will not be simple. The man says they lack personnel to both guard the territory and hunt for the chief. Approaching and stating they don't need to hide anything from him, Chiansu asks whether he can have a look at the chief's office. They don't have time after all, hence the more knowledge he possesses, the better. The man agrees and starts sweating. A little later, Chiansu shows up at the makeshift office. He advises the chat to look for hints, but none turn up. Then he comes upon a marked map. Place is not far from there, he understands. Someone else is behind him at that instant. When he asks who it is, the guy reports having heard he is searching for the chief. The man walks in and gestures he heard the youngster defeat a quite strong monster. Gyang, the person identifies himself as, shakes hands. Still, he seems to be somewhat forceful, questioning whether Chiansu discovered anything. Calling Chiansu too weak, the chatters mock him. Chiansu wonders why this guy is acting, then they hear a scream and everyone bolts, demanding what happened. Among the throng, they spot several infected. People are trying to leave, but once 2 or 3 are bitten, there is no escape. Chiansu questions why this is occurring, and the discussion notes that it will become messy. Thinking he should be helping the people, he takes the hammer. He moves toward the throng as the cops cannot use their weapons without striking innocent people. Chiansu tackles the first infected, yelling at the cops to make use of their bandanas. Turning back, he yells at the police to act. Holding a fried pan, Even the restaurant man promises to help. Mr. Gyang is advised to exercise caution by the man sporting a bandana, but Gyang swings the fried pan at the infected. Chiansu turns and demolishes a couple more. Gyang knows Chiansu is purchasing time to complete the task. If so, he does his share, beating the sick 3 times with the pan till the cops arrive to help. People are yelling to let the gates open in order to flee. Seeing everything locked, Chiansu is convinced some bastard let an infected in. Chiansu thinks only a police officer gone insane has the power to accomplish that. He informs the live feed he is going to get the police chief since he cannot handle this now. Having business to do, he urges Gyung to keep an eye on the police. Gyung seems perplexed, but Chiansu says he's returning this gratuity as thanks for Mingyu's compassion, and there's not time to clarify. He then begins to sprint, and someone questions his destination. A police officer blocks him, but Chiansu merely advises they should focus on themselves. Telling the chat he being there would interfere with his plans, he goes back to pick the bike he was on. He is confident the location shown on the map has something dubious. A while later, he finds himself at the middle of the wilderness, reaching a container. He wonders whether it was a lot of zombies since, from the windows, there is no one inside, yet the floor is covered in footsteps. Turning to the discussion, he queries when he should get a fresh supply chest. The boys reply they assumed he was in hard mode. No way, Chiansu replies. He needs support and it is already too difficult. One of them laughs that he will have to enter some as supplies are paid for. Chiansu encouraged him to examine the bottom of the chat since he seemed perplexed about this sponsored content stuff. He went down and came upon a money sign. His clicking revealed that donations had been turned off. The conversation pushed him to turn on it right away. He unlocked monetization after he turned it on and sent 1 Zen. 2 others sent 2 more Zen apiece, and he was enraged that these jerks were hiding this only to complicate the game. He then went inside the seemingly regular house-like container. The conversation inquired whether he was upset with them, and he replied he had no resentment. He was well aware, though, that there was a lot these men were not covering. He started to question why this house appeared on the map with such mark. Startled, zombies suddenly materialized at the window out of nowhere. The aggro was triggered, and he understood the footprints indeed belonged to zombies. The conversation laughed, curious as to why he was afraid of his pals, but the aggressiveness kept getting worse. Chiansu kicked the first zombie at the door, realizing he would be surrounded. The ATK went to 8 and passed 14 swiftly. His physical prowess had grown by 240%, but encircled he was dominant. Then he heard a horn and watched a car coming. He avoided getting hit by dodging, then noticed it was the same man guiding zombies toward the university. Chiansu told the garbage to come out, as he knew who it was. The man was hiding behind the glass. Guillaume was the one wondering how this rubbish avoided like that. Not to mention this nasty child was handling on his own several zombies. Fuming, Guillaume threatened he would bury him in the muck. Startled, Chiansu let Guillaume speed ahead. Saying he wanted to show how screwed Chiansu was, he ran over something and stopped the car. But that was merely a zombie. Someone knocked on the window. Chiansu urged him to open it. Guillaume shocked, but Chiansu elbowed him. It was simple once his physical strength raised to this degree. Guillaume shifted to the side, reached for an airsoft gun, aimed, but Chiansu ducked. Guillaume quickened, seeking cover. He observed Chiansu sprinting after him when peering in the rearview mirror. Given he was already traveling 80 miles per hour, he found it impossible. Saying the child was angry, Chiansu ran desperately with the talk. Furious, Guillaume declared Chiansu was about to get a lesson. Near some containers, he began to move about hoping to lose Chiansu. When Chiansu yells out to Guillaume, the man reaches into the glove compartment, presses a button, and wishes him luck. The containers open to show they are zombie-filled. According to the discussion, Chiansu's aggressiveness is already at 40. He is screwed now. Guillaume speeds forward, declaring it too late for Chiansu to atone for anything. Chiansu believes he will finish this in 2 minutes, nevertheless, with 500% enhanced physical capacity. The sequence starts when the first zombie falls swiftly. There are still many more even if he is readily defeating them. Seeing Guillaume parked near a tree, he determines he will murder that bastard first. As Guillaume is messaging, he runs, approaches, and bursts the window. Chiansu asks where the police chief is. Chiansu pauses his hand as Guillaume tries once again to grasp for his waist. The chat advises him to be alert for Guillaume's left hand. Chiansu immobilizes him once again. When Guillaume asks Chiansu who this damn child is, he responds his supporters really love him. Declaring he is the one driving right now, he kicks Guillaume. Chiansu grabs the automobile and mumbles that these morons has complicated everything for him. Guillaume falls asleep and drools. Chiansu discovers a pair of handcuffs. The chat advises he would obtain money should he cox Guillaume. The concept interests Chiansu until he sees zombies on their way. He cocks Guillaume and drives quickly through the zombies. Then he understands he ought to have paid closer attention to the panel. From the start, the communication had indicated that police chief was at the culinary school. He came here not for any reason, but then he spots a teddy bear crossing the street. He attempts to stop, but strikes the toy, which rolls on the road. The conversation chuckles, and he wonders whether they too notice the eerie doll strolling around. The teddy bear gets up out of nowhere and is left confused, not knowing what to do. When the small monster starts to flee, it obviously is staring at him. When the protagonist wonders what the hell it is, just one answers that of the soul bear. Unlike a monster, he says, always leads you straight to a reward chest. When Chiansu sees Guillaume waking, the chat probes if he intends to follow the teddy bear. Chiansu asks the chat to enter 1 if they want the guy to go back to sleep, and 2 if they want him to use the taser. He grabs the taser. Everybody types 1. Chiansu chooses 2, tasering Guillaume back into unconsciousness. He gets off the car. Chiansu trails the teddy bear over the forest until it finally finds the reward chest. The issue is he must spend 5 of the zens he acquired to access the chest. The shield icon suggests most likely it's not a weapon. The discussion exhorts him to open it straightforwardly instead of stalling since it is boring. He chooses to open it, ignoring them. He discovers to be an amazing flashlight. Feeling a little let down, he remarks it was a waste. Still, he puts it in his pocket since it's time to get back to the university and there is no other choice. People are remarking back at the institution on how inept one must be to let a zombie pass through. Chiansu claims he was present the whole time, hence he had no trouble with the circumstances. He advises them to keep the people cool and not to cause undue concern. Saying something needs his attention, someone asks for Chiansu. He wonders whether they got in touch with Guillaume Go in a corner. She advises they should move the cops. Chiansu sees it as the responsibility of that damned youngster. He says it's okay, and that he will handle the police chief since 3 of them are in this together. He was unaware, nevertheless, that Guillaume Go listened to everything while seated on the stairs. Those jerks were indeed acting in concert. Guillaume Go saw the men moving toward the annex. Another official discovered Guillaume Go's jeep there. They checked and discovered him unconscious and bound. Now running was Guillaume Go, convinced Chiansu was right. He had to chat to the lad till a hand brushed his face. Saying he had located him, Chiansu said, when Chiansu inquired about his findings, Guillaume Go seized him and questioned whether he knew everything already. The police heads were in the basement, he said, with someone watching the door. The scene changes to show Chiansu at the door listening in on the inside dialogue. Chiansu requests the man to stop even though he claims he can withstand a beating. While Chiansu stands at the entrance merely observing, the man gets ready the taser. Then someone advises in the discussion that he should kick the door in and get a zen. He opens the door and kicks the man in the rear. Though he falls to the ground like a fool, the man earns Chiansu a zen. Chiansu stands up and reaches to grab a weapon, but he pauses his hand to ask if he knows who he is. Kneeling, Chiansu claims he is the feeling of humanity the man lost. When the man tries to turn the rifle, Chiansu blocks his arm. The man clicks once more, but no bullets emerge after missing multiple rounds. Chiansu asks whether it was the last one, grinning. Saying that was for Mingyu, he gives him a front-on punch. Saying that's for the police, he slams him once more on the chin, and a last blow, stating this one is for everything he went through. Seeing the police chief unconscious, he orders the keys be turned over. Reaching for his back, the man tries to grasp the taser, but Chiansu strikes him with the same weapon. Chiansu notes that their matching ones are just too coincidental. He prods him to say something. The chat exhorts Chiansu to finish him off, but he claims more people are arriving, therefore it is not finished yet. Rising, Chiansu looks to the side. Another man walks by and he strikes fast to neutralize him. His cold-blooded efficiency really strikes the discussion as impressive. Chiansu remarks that the man was overly loud. He gets still another batch of zens and feels good about himself. A background voice queries if he actually killed a police officer. He turns suddenly and says, "It's time to finish this." He asks the man whether he has any preference for his dying manner. The man begs he should wait, but Chiansu assures him it will be short. He presents choices. Start with the arm, leg, or orchestra, perhaps the last choice. Grinning, he says the man seems quite afraid for someone who fired him previously. He thanks others with another zen smile. It seems he's done for as the man yells. The discussion giggles, noting the man even went personally. Embarrassed, Chiansu probes what the man is doing. People outside observe something and turn around at the same moment. It is Chiansu bringing the actual police chief. The traitors are bound in the basement, he informs the officials. Now Chiansu feels he has at last settled the matter as the other police dash to check. He glances at the panel, which cautions against spending too much time in the same place. He is full from eating in one of the cabins next morning. When he considers how much better things have been over the past day, he unlocks the panel and discovers the somewhat strange information regarding remaining in the same location. He probes the chat on how long is too long, but they appear reluctant to respond. Someone yells out to Chiansu, then he rises up and faces a car. The police chief probes why he is going already. When the lad asks whether there is a problem, the chief offers to supply some provisions should he be truly going. He did a lot for the people after all. Pointing out that those individuals tried to take his life, Kansu remembers the moment he asked whether the chief was indeed going to deport the traitors. The chief says it's difficult to honor the life of two former friends. Not to worry, Kansu advises, he will handle it. Chiansu is shown in the next scene racing in a car carrying two traitors tied back at the rear. He says he's not in the mood, even the cops ask him to stop. The first cop is bitten as the chat states he is fixing things. He stops after about 80 miles per hour. Seeing nobody is tied anymore, he tells regretfully that a small accident occurred. The chief thanks Chiansu back in the present. He says he wouldn't reject certain goods. Agreeing, the chief even gives the automobile. He asks him not to depart without bidding everyone farewell. Sitting in the car with a flashlight, our lad wonders what it is for. The talk advises him to relax and to wait to see what transpires. Agreeing, he finally nods off. He wakes up abruptly feeling quite cold. Though the air conditioner wasn't even running, he doesn't know how long he slept. Then he spots something in the rearview mirror coming. Benevolent behind a cloak is a skeleton. The chat alerts us that it is at last here. Chiansu tries to flee, drifts, and quickly picks acceleration. He merely rushes past when the cops urge him to wait. He tells the chat to warn him next time instead of laughing at him. Looking, he notes the monster has disappeared. He is unaware, nevertheless, that it is only next to the window. He speeds once again to create some distance between them as the rearview mirror breaks. The talk advises him he will have to migrate to another area. He cannot escape it else either. Suddenly, the creature shows up in front of him and he falls against a pillar. The airbag deploys, but Chiansu gets really shook. The thing moves slowly forward. Leaving the car, Chiansu grabs his gun and fires a shot. But the beast is everlasting. Not sure it works, he starts sprinting. He eventually becomes weary in a corridor. The discussion notes that he seems destined for death today. The creature shows up once more in front of him and charges. He points the beam, and the monster seems to cover itself. Being a gamer, he understood this kind of object had some use. He runs out the window at this point and leaps onto a bike. The tire is flat, hence he falls and damages his knee. Once more approaching is the beast. He runs on after throwing the flashlight. The thing follows even as he tries to fire more shots. He pauses, then he spots the creature. Observing a line on the he knows. The monster's range of travel is limited as such. This is the last shot, he adds. The thing falls apart. Our lad, though, is failing and falls on the ground. Then he looks at something close by. A faint flutter on and off occurs often. Though everyone cautions that it is absolutely a trap, he is naturally fascinated. Chiansu notes he should check it out since it resembles Morse code. He yells to the individual to stop as he gets closer. Raising his hand and stating he's not a horrible guy, Mingsu Yang asks Chiansu not to shoot. As Chiansu asks whether he is a cop, the discussion notes that they have at last found someone more stupid than the protagonist. When Chiansu probes Mingsu about whether he is a lump, he responds yes. Chiansu insists on the flashlight, but Mingsu pauses. Pointing his revolver, Chiansu asks whether he truly intends to take that long. Mingsu grudgingly passes over the flashlight, and Chiansu requests his backpack. Saying he only has this to eat, Mingsu begs. If he gives it away, he is as good as dead. Everything is on the ground after some time. Chiansu remarks they have the same items. Almost in tears, poor Mingsu says he only has. Chiansu, though, urges the lad to strip down to his clothing quite shabbily. Later, he asks Chiansu whether she will leave him now as he is getting dressed once more. Chiansu wonders how a child his like survived without carrying any weapons. He probes whether Mingsu is serving as bait and working with others. Saying they will part, Jiansu urges the chat to keep an eye on the lad's face and turns around. Mingsu then speaks up, stating all of his buddies are dead and he suffered a lot to arrive at there. He's a coward, hence the only reason he's alive. The chat remarks he seems to be honest. Mingsu assures Jiansu that such is indeed true. Saying he cannot overlook a junior in need of assistance, Jiansu tells him to follow. In the next scene, a frog pins down a man asking where Jiansu is. Running from the large mouth monster, the hapless man queries where it originated from. Ignoring him, Mingsu Yang advises him to turn left. Stumbling, the monster runs into a building. Turning, Mingsu informs Jiansu they will follow the same path close to a brook. Jiansu beams and advises him to start worrying about himself. Walking along the edge, they pass across an excavated area. Though it tries to follow, the monster trips and falls. When Jiansu signals Mingsu to duck, he sees a gigantic tongue obstructing their road ahead. He talks, and they both duck. The tongue swipes by. Still, the creature was tracking closely and finally found its mouth full. The frog grew enraged at it, and the monster drew it with its tongue. Jiansu and Mingsu grabbed the chance to flee as the two animals battled. Jiansu grinned, then it was obvious how this child survived. Jiansu gets tired in the next scene and asks whether this tandem bike is Mingsu's grand scheme. Jiansu says he'll try. Mingsu merely advises him to keep pedaling. They are virtually at their target, a location with enough resources. Mingsu probes whether Jiansu is aware of Division 7.5 and whether he can ask questions. He says he only found a memo stating his companions were with that division when he went hunting for them. Jiansu replies he doesn't know much, but he have heard of them. Still, he is careful since that's the same separation that claimed his father. They eventually come to a building. A car approaches and practically runs them over. Jiansu gets off the bike and remarks it's never easy. When he taps on the window, the chat asks whether it's a zombie. He names the man Yongjun Cho and notes he is human. He tosses him on the ground after dragging him from the automobile. Saying he should have at least carried a gun, Jiansu begins looking through the car but finds nothing valuable there. Pulling a knife, Yongjun tells Jiansu not to pilfer anything. Telling him to shut up, Jiansu kicks him. Yongjun says he can take anything he wants and apologies. Taking the knife, Jiansu remarks it seems Yongjun is a deserter. When he asks whether he turned away his friends, Yongjun responds, no. Everybody in his base is dead, in fact. Jiansu tells Mikyul you could tell just by looking at Yongjun whether he is indeed a soldier. Then he sees something, reaches to Yongjun's neck, and yanks his dog tag. He tells Yongjun to repeat any service number while he is holding it in his palm. The poor man begins to perspire and slowly counts. Jiansu claims he understood it exactly, yet still seems dubious. Jiansu finally probes whether he is aware of Division 7.5. No, Yongjun says he has never even heard of it. Jiansu gets to his feet, and Mikyul advises against staying there. He gets in the car and orders them to leap over the fence. Looking at Yongjun, labeling him as useless, they question if they ought to bring him. Since Yongjun cannot survive alone and his legs are shattered, he begs to be taken along. The protagonist notes Yongjun had earlier asked to be left alone. Yongjun said he believed they could hurt him. Jiansu responds, it's not fair. When the discussion notes he would never save anyone. He orders Minsuil to open the gate and advises him to bring Yongjun should he so wish. Minsuil agrees, and they start toward the construction. Jiansu questions the closed gate when he sees 4 vehicles in the parking lot. He warns everyone to be careful when opening the door, since someone might be inside. When they enter, nothing moves. Jiansu says he'll look about when Yongjun is taken to the infirmary. Acting like a terrified toddler, Minsuil begs not to be left alone. Jiansu calms him, suggesting he might not desert him. He asks the chat what they would think about leaving the child behind as he climbs the stairs. One person expresses the infant seems real, while another has different view. Then he hears someone mentioning a safe haven. He finds a lot of communicators, shockingly still powered when he unlocks the door. According to the statement, Division 7.5 is headed to Jeju Island. At last, Jiansu has a clue, and requests the system to open the information screen. It orders him to get out of the city via the train station. He hurries back yelling for Minsuil, but when he gets to the room he discovers Yongjun alone and wonders where the child is. Minsuil heard some noises and went to investigate, Yongjun adds. Furious, Jiansu runs out, asking how he could be leaving the lad alone. To leave, he understands he requires a cab key. Searching among papers, he discovers something is wrong. People had switched off the lights even though they had power. He screams and rushes when searching for the keys. Inquiring about what happened, he discovers Youngjun on the floor. Saying he heard noise from the basement, Youngjun asks for assistance getting up. Footsteps sound at that instant, rising from the stairs. When a man hostages Minsuil, both are shocked. Chiansu turns down Minsuil's orders to run. Demanding the man to free Minsuil, he gestures with a knife. Sweating, the man says Minsuil broke into his business and is a burglar. Stating they have no more drivers remaining, he points at both of them and charges them of being burglars. Chiansu now sees why he couldn't locate any keys. Youngjun was afraid. Chiansu criticized the owner of the company for sending his taxi drivers. He sought to clarify he wasn't a thief. All brilliantly, he insisted he was actually a novice cab driver there on assistance. This complicated the conversation, but Chiansu wanted to assist in this dilemma and was attempting to persuade the man that he indeed was among the greatest drivers. Already lost his wits, the owner of the company inquired where his resume was and said they truly needed more drivers. Surprised, Chiansu was a little disoriented. The individual mentioned he had to have brought a resume for an interview. Saying he had previously brought it and that it was at the office, Chiansu asked Youngjun to grab it. When Youngjun went to the owner of the company, Chiansu was stated to be rather diligent in seeking a job at such a timing. Bringing back a paper, Youngjun told Chiansu he came upon the most like one. The owner merely looked at it. Then Chiansu advised Minsuil to arrive swiftly. He gave the man a shoulder bump and ran for them. Our lad grabbed Youngjun's crutch and aimed at the corporate owner. He told Minsuil right away to hold down the man's arms and legs. Finding the key, they dashed to the car and instructed Youngjun to drive. Chiansu instructed the man to head toward the train station when he asked where to go. Then he couldn't believe it as he watched individuals desperately run with a great eye toward their backs. Everybody was being chased by a massive spider-like thing. He assured Youngjun he had hope he would lead them out of there. Poor Youngjun was clueless about the thing. As the monster approached, Youngjun simply sped the automobile. He turned, but the only place to flee was nowhere. The proprietor of the corporation had liberated himself at that point and dubbed them a bunch of bastards. Kim-soo instructed Youngjun on turning the automobile and returning to the main door. Screaming for his taxi, the owner noticed it arriving accompanied by a monster. Right in front, they drifted, and the beast ran against a building. They ran along the street. Youngjun asked Chiansu in the car whether she truly meant to use that man as bait. Weary, Chiansu claimed the man was undoubtedly a brilliant business CEO. Minsuil pointed out that ultimately, that was the best choice available to all of them to survive. Then Chiansu became aware of something. Before them stood the blue line. It registered still another checkpoint when they passed it. Now the conversation can assign him missions. Harder missions offer bigger rewards. The live feed was cheering and declaring the man who always maxes out cards would shine. Chiansu inquired of the conversation whether Minsuil could see them. The chat said he could not see or hear them when Chiansu spoke just to the chat. Looking over the system, Chiansu inquired what it was as he did not see any purposes stated. The man who maxed out his cards stated Chiansu would understand shortly and contributed a zen. Chiansu replied he was really nervous and held out his hand. Then he heard feet walking. In retrospect, the thing was trailing them. Turning to Youngjun, he inquired whether he might go faster. But Youngjun replied he was already running at top pace. The creature was getting on them, and Chiansu questioned whether it moved more quickly in a straight line. When he asked Minsuil whether he knew another path, he responded no. Minsuil advised the lad to consider carefully and to suggest climbing the mountain on the left. Youngjun warned it would be slower, but Chiansu said they would perish otherwise. Chiansu observed they were getting distance as they climbed. Youngjun cautioned, though, of a sudden change to come. Chiansu asked Minsuil, who answered merely to keep on as the creature could not stop its momentum. Turning to the discussion, Chiansu sought an assignment to earn a prize. The conversation claimed he was doomed, and Chiansu began to lose hope. Then the man with the maxed out card presented a fresh objective. He had to start mocking the beast by rolling down the taxi window. He would get a buff in exchange that would maintain the car's course for 5 seconds. Chiansu rolled down the window right away to start screaming that the thing was ugly as hell. Left behind the unfortunate beast was Minsuil questioned what type of lunacy this was while Chiansu kept yelling insults. Chiansu persisted in screaming, challenging the monster to attempt killing him. The buff was sprayed and the task was finished. Youngjun turned in view of the bend sign. The buff helped the vehicle to remain on the road while the creature was flown off. It was a cliff, not just a bend, and despite the warning, the engineers deserved compliments. Youngjun was surprised they hadn't been thrown off given the thing bumping them. Minsul was tired. Chiansu thanked the card, carrying man who stated he now owed him one. Later on, Chiansu reports he thought the radio message would bring more people. But oddly, the train station is empty except one individual. They choose to toss the automobile somewhere and walk the rest of the way. Youngjun brings up the undead, but Chiansu promises to handle it. Minsul questions him to be sure. Chiansu answers him. Then Chiansu yells for the creatures, orders them to approach. 3 monsters start toward him, therefore augmenting his power to Edian Cedian. He starts to understand just how strong this capacity is. He encourages them not to panic, and quickly deals with it even though he readily kills the animals till one slips behind him. He advises the conversation participants to quit saying such embarrassing things and remarks on his bravery and development. Still, he thinks his reflexes and strength have improved somewhat. He witnesses a man shouting out for someone called Chamguchang as they stroll. Knowing this is the name of the mayor of the city, Chiansu wonders whether this man serves him. He asks the conversation whether he should save the man and the guy with the maxed out card. The answer is yes. Though most say no, Chiansu thinks he has to save him. Suddenly falling dead on top of the man, the zombie is poised to kill him. Desperate tears abound. The man says the mayor left him to die. The mayor rejected his suggestion to locate another station due to the monsters, pushed him out of the automobile, and advised him to wander around, therefore putting him in this state. Jiansu adds it seems the man guarantees they will locate the mayor at the train station. When he asks whether the man was a bodyguard, he responds no. Different hired persons were assigned protective duties. Thinking it's a mission of great importance, Jiansu gets enthusiastic. The individual reports he doesn't see his buddies in front of the station. Declaring they must be inside, Jiansu reassumes him and introduces himself as Jiansu Huang. The man pauses suddenly, points to something, then asks what it is. Jiansu is about to yell out to the man since she notes it seems like a child. Jiansu asks what he is thinking and rapidly conceals his mouth. A child wouldn't be alone in a setting like this, quite obviously. Up close, the conversation notes he is the unluckiest man ever. Jiansu asks for a prize and questions if it is so dangerous. The chat says no, but the maxed out card person donates 100,000 zens. 1 zen is approximately 10,000 Korean won, hence Jiansu knows roughly $700. Grateful for the significant gift, he covers the man's mouth. Since the female is most clearly not human, Jiansu advises the man to keep quiet and that he will handle it. The female then pivots and begins to sprint though. Terrified, the man starts to rapidly down the steps but falls to the ground exactly before the creature. He cries that another one exists. In that instant, he gets eaten. The discussion notes that Jiansu is a quiet girl and wonders why the guy behaved in such manner. From the term, he understands she must be a kind of creature responding to sound. Then someone designated as the new master sets off a task. Jiansu cannot move until the female passes him. He will then acquire a minute-long deaf ability. She passes by closely. He understands this is quite dangerous. The conversation asks whether she is gazing right at him, and he freezes, heavily sweating. She passes at last, and the mission is carried out. Jiansu then visits the man's body, which is in good condition, and picks his wallet to verify the name. But when he turns, the man gets standing. Jiansu finishes him once more fast. He flees as far as he can pray. The creature isn't close by. Then he hears Minchu screaming inside as one of the quiet females breaks down a door. He watches the girl and muses on it. He turns to go, but the new boss assigns him to save Minchu and Yumjin from the toilet. Seeing its value of 20 zen, he finds it worthwhile. He goes to a local diner, and the conversation probes whether he is that hungry. Examining the clocks, he wonders if the conversation knows his strategy. The 2 unfortunate males are attempting to survive the quiet girls in the bathroom meanwhile. Jiansu shows up at the door next. The timer sets off beeping when it strikes 0. The 2 monsters turn around, as Jiansu bursts out flinging another timer to the other side. He throws 2 more rapidly next one another, guiding the beasts away. Minchu at last lets go once the beasts vanish. The discussion probes his lack of usage of the mission reward ability. He still has the ability to momentarily silence someone, but the issue is he has to touch them, and he knows he would be cut in half if he got near anything like that. The army man tells him then that his ankle is fractured. Jiansu orders Minchu to assist, therefore completing the objective. He turns to find the army guy after then hearing a grunt behind him. Then he notices Yoonjin looks to be beginning to change. His leg wasn't broken exactly. Furious that they went to all this effort for this to happen at the end, Chiansu asks Yoonjin whether he remembers the guy who changed before. He runs after grabbing Mingqiu. Chiansu apologizes when he sees Yoonjin from a distance. When Mingqiu probes what's happening, Chiansu says it's too late for Yoonjin. They head to check the trains but come nowhere with any helpful information. Then they notice Yoonjin pointing to the side and hear noise. While Yoonjin is emptying himself, Chiansu turns his head and discovers the train is oddly still running. Regarding Yoonjin, Chiansu claims he will never forget him. All he has to do is honor this man by finishing the game. Chiansu orders Mingqiu to pay attention at the station should he wish not to die. He had to remain on alert as the train is bound to carry something they do not want. Mingqiu says he understands and there is a declaration the train is on approach. They choose to hide under a wooden crate they come upon. The train draws in and carries the life with it. Another locomotive crosses by at that same instant. Apparently, the monster-luring agent used the front train. Chiansu understands the train was meant for the mayor. He leaves the crate, orders Mingqiu to remain still, then bolts toward the train. Approaching gently, he finds the conductor there. A girl shows up and queries why the damn mayor isn't here. Chiansu remembers seeing her on the internet as an officer who embodied the dream for a better future and notes she knows from somewhere. Soo-yoon Jang is her name. She is wondering whether the Division 7.5 bastards are lying to her. Though Chiansu feels her demeanor differs from that of the interview, he must board the train. He understands they might both paralyze Mingqiu when she comes out of the crate, but it would be better if she could assist him. Mingqiu claims that's just one person so they can manage it. But Chiansu questions who he is as he is ready to approach. Chiansu tells everyone to stop when Mingqiu is about to strike. Where he obtained that? She claims since she is alone, he seems to believe he can pilfers the train. Chiansu admits she misinterpreted and shows her a card. She doubts his toughness even if the card states he serves as the mayor's security guard. Chiansu claims he has something to tell her. The discussion then notes, here comes the madness. Then he declares that the mayor passed away. Given they had to come here attracted by a lot of creatures, Soo-yoon seems perplexed and questions what he is talking about. Soo-yoon claims that things have gotten tricky and that there is a sound resonant in the station. Chiansu advises they depart, but she argues she was hired to get the mayor back. Once they get to the base, Chiansu says he would explain since he is the only one with knowledge of the mayor. She pauses briefly then accepts, promising to bring him to the shelter. Chiansu argues they should invite his friend along. Looking at Min-swol, she remarks he doesn't seem like a city servant. Chiansu probes whether she believes it appropriate to drop off a student in the midst of nowhere. She grudgingly agrees to have that pipe seized. They then launch the train and start to depart. They notice someone descending at that very instant. Yeonjun is Chiansu, and he praises him claiming he lived due of him. He's pushed to the ground at just that as some men descend the stairs. Chiansu spots the mayor yelling for the train to stop. Inquiring about the noise, Soo-yoon leaves the cabin. Reaching out to tell them to stop the train, the mayor is there to save he. When she probes Chiansu about what's going on, he advises her to see what's trailing. Many mute girls are following them. Should they stop, everyone will perish. She becomes irate but gets back on the train. The mayor questions how they dare leave him like this and refers them as a lot of bastards. Oddly, he states the code is the end before passing death. He ground collapses and gets eaten. Chiansu probes the debate about whether that was the wisest course of action. The conversation concurs, noting that Chiansu told Minsu to enter. Soo-yoon begs an explanation when they get to the cabin. She says they would be thrown out otherwise. The protagonist says straightforwardly that the mayor is dead and that what he stated is accurate. When she asks whether he believes she is an idiot, Chiansu says he never really met the mayor. Demanding to know who he is, she pushes him against the wall. Chiansu says he's sorry and introduces himself. She wonders why he lied and probes about his strategy. Chiansu says he never claimed to be the person on the card. He is simply a passenger on this train. He only displayed it. She yells in his face, yelling he ought to be thrown out the window. Chiansu says he only obtained the card since the original owner vanished for dead. Knowing the region was teeming with life, he felt it was essential to evacuate them from there. She strikes his foot, making him trip, and tells him he still misled her. Chiansu remembers her interview in which she spoke of people overcoming difficult circumstances. He claims to be among such persons. She becomes nervous and says it was only a little article when she questions how he knows her name. Though Chiansu doesn't know why she's blushing suddenly, she nonetheless compliments her for being a lighthouse of hope in a modern society. She turns away, ashamed, claiming that few people saw the interview. He favors the police or was simply bored. Hence, she is not sure whether he viewed the story. She then says, "What's done is done though, and they will have to cooperate now." When Chiansu asks whether she ensures they are headed to Daejin, she says yes. He then probes her about Division 7.5 and whether she know anything about them. Suin says they are in charge of activating the cheeky little bell, helping Mamoru create more tasty material for his audience, and I'm out during the apocalypse.